welcome to tonight's event, which will take us behind the scenes of what it's been like producing TV programs in a year dominated by the pandemic. I'm Graham Thompson. I'm Pro Vice Chancellor at the University of Sunderland. I also chair the Royal Television Society's Education Committee, which supports more than 100 students from across the UK with bursaries and mentoring as they work towards careers in television. So, you know, TV production is challenging at the best of times, and we know that there are certainly nationally and locally real skills shortages in the production sector. But if you throw in lockdowns, masks, social distancing, travel bans, bubbles, you can just see the complexities multiply. And of course, there's the spectre of disruption, illness, and sadly, in some cases, even death when anyone connected with the program contracts the virus. I suppose the irony of this is that at a time when making TV has been more challenging than ever, the lockdown public are watching more of it than ever. So how have the program makers coped with the restrictions, and how many of the workarounds and innovations that have been kind of dreamed up during the pandemic will survive beyond the restrictions? Well, that's exactly what we're going to be finding out over the next hour. If you want to post any questions or comments, feel free to use the Q&A function on your screen. Now, our host is no stranger to Northeast viewers as the award-winning presenter of the BBC's popular Inside Out current affairs show. So popular, in fact, the BBC have decommissioned it. But let's not go there. These days, he's a TV producer and a reporter, and I'm delighted to invite Chris Jackson to get us underway.
Thank you, Graham. You give with one hand and take with the other. Why not? So just to say thank you very much indeed for joining us. And we are going to explore exactly those issues you raised there, Graham. I've got a distinguished panel with us tonight. We've got Ian Bevitt, who is a director of great notes, has worked on numerous soaps. So obviously Coronation Street, I think several hundred episodes. Hello, Ian. And also more lately on Emmerdale, and now has a new role as a COVID supervisor or COVID consultant. So obviously we're going to pick his brain on this too. We've also got Ian McGough, who's joined us. So hi, Ian, from Teesside, who runs his own independent film company, Ithaca Films, and we'll be talking to him about how his sector's been affected too. Now, trying to get TV executives in one room is always difficult at the best of times, trying to shepherd sheep or cats into a room. So two of our panelists will be joining us, but maybe not right now. And that's because we've got Fahima Chowdhury, who's from Vera, who today of all days, we set this date in the diary, and then it turns out they're going to do the first day's filming for a new episode today. And she's out in West Northumberland, which is not great for connectivity. So hopefully she may join us. But if not, I have always, like good TV producer, got a plan B. And I recorded some of our chats when I was doing my research, and I can drop those in as we go along. And the same applies to Victoria Griffin, who has been working on a kids' TV program shot in the Northeast called Danny and Mick. And she's now on a new project, which is so secret, she can't even tell me what it is. But she had a recce today and was going to be joining us. And then they called a production meeting this evening. So she's had to go to that. So with any luck, they'll be joining us certainly by the time we get to the Q&As. I'm fingers crossed, but who knows? But we'll crack on straight away. And I mentioned there, Ian, actually, I had a plan B for tonight because we always plan for the worst, but I guess nobody planned for a pandemic. So when did you first get wind of something going awry?
I was shooting a block on Emmerdale. I'd been there since the sort of previous September, and I was working in a scanner van on a location alongside Carly Armstrong, the script supervisor, some people here might know. And Carly was kind of looking at her phone and talking about this virus, and we both sort of said it, because it was in the news and things. This is about February, and we both sort of said this looks a bit more serious than, you know, the previous kind of bird flu sort of things that, you know, had been in the news previously. And around the same time, Jane Hudson, who's the exec producer, series producer at Emmerdale, had a conversation with me and said, this COVID, this coronavirus thing looks like it might well, you know, end in a lockdown or some sort of close down of production. And, you know, that's obviously very worrying. And what do you think about the idea of, do you think you could shoot an episode a day of 2 characters in one set, 3 cameras, 2 characters, 1 set? And I said, with the right script, the right characters, and, you know, a fair wind behind us, we could give it a go. And we were just sort of starting to set up for that. I mean, we were discussing, the writers discussing which members of cast that might be. And we were making the initial foray into that. And all of a sudden we shut down. And that was my kind of, you know, I suddenly went, oh, okay. My contract coming up with Coronation Street was summarily torn up. And for the first time, you know, touch wood, in over 20 years of freelance work as a drama director, I had no work lined up because there wasn't any work to do. It was about that time when I thought to myself, maybe I should have saved for this rainy day, and I hadn't. So there was a kind of pulling in of the sails a little bit, and we were wondering what was going to happen. And within about 4 weeks or so, I was contacted by Nada Mabadi, the brilliant production manager at Emmerdale, and he said, "Look, these 2-handers, we think they'll be the first things that might get going, because we're going to have to work in a different way. And, you know, can you start to prep for those? You've got the scripts, started to look at them." And at that point, we had no idea of what the protocols might be. The 2-meter distancing, those sort of things weren't being discussed. And I was told, you know, you can have 3 cameras, you can kind of, it's two actors, we can rehearse with them, we'll do whatever you want to do, as long as we can get it done in a day. We were going to shoot 6 over the course of a fat week. And then as we got closer to the time, and then we realized all sorts of, you know, protocols and precautions would have to be put into place, I was told it's not 3 cameras anymore, it's 2, because we can't have 3 cameras across the apron of the stage, the shooting sound stage. We can only have 2 because they can stay 2 meters from one another. The other thing is the artists have all got to be 2 meters from one another in small domestic sets, which we have on soaps, that are built for people to kind of mill together, so they keep together in the frame. You know, that became a challenge. And there were all the protocols and precautions put into place for health and safety that we hadn't had before. So that was my kind of introduction to it, really.
Well, I'll get into the detail of how you got around that shortly. Obviously, we'll find out how you got around it. I'll bring in Fahima now, who I spoke to, as I say, before this, because she's working on Vera, and they were ready to go for April to start filming, and suddenly everything was thrown into chaos. So let me just share with you what she had to say, and we'll get a view of what it was like. Basically, they really didn't know what was coming.
You know, we were all pretty much gobsmacked that we were coming back at any time, and that was last year. So we shot 2 episodes last year,
and that was pretty amazing, really, because in those early days, we had no idea what the disease was doing, how it was going to allow us to come back or anything. So you presumably had written a year off, or not?
Yeah, there was points. I think I am quite optimistic, and I just thought maybe we could squeeze in 1 episode, you know, because I knew behind the scenes how much work was going on, and I know across the industry that was happening, you know. And even though we were off, you know, from work, we heard what was going on and discussions, and there was a real push to try and make it happen, because we're an industry full of freelancers and everyone was out of work. So, you know.
But I suppose Northeast crews kind of rely on, you know, Vera's 10 series now, 11 series. So there's a kind of a rhythm to the workload for a Northeast crew, which, you know, has suddenly vanished completely.
Yes. yes, absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, you know, I know a lot of people didn't think we were gonna come back last year, really. You know, the rumor mill starts.
So that was Fahima Chowdhury there. So that was what was going on the set of Vera. There was another production that was going on in the Northeast, and that was the kids' TV program for CBBC, which is called Danny and Mick, and that's done at a leisure centre in New Bigham by the Sea. Now, in the case of that, they were in the middle of an episode when they got the call to say pack everything away and stop. So that was a real nightmare for them. So this is Victoria Griffin, who's the production manager, and I'll let you see what she had to say about how it was going for them.
It was panic stations the next day. So we basically had to pack down our location. We had 2 days to pack down the entire location, which included and was not limited to everything from stationery to camera equipment, sound equipment. We had to get the cast home. It was quite crazy. It was quite busy. So we basically, you know, we packed everybody away. So we used various areas of the building we were in to store everything, lock everything up, and just kind of make sure that the minute that we were told, you know, you're going to come back, we could pull everything out of storage and get back to it immediately. I think we had the first 2 episodes filmed, and we on the series we usually film 20 episodes. So they went away, and over the 3 months that we were locked down, they rewrote. We dropped 1 episode and we kept 17 of them, and they rewrote them. So that included, you know, cutting down cast sizes, guest cast. Obviously, our series is an incredibly physical show. So again, we had to think about how we could keep that kind of physical comedy, but at the same time maintain COVID safety and get the laughs that we wanted to get. So a lot of it was, you know, between the 2 lead characters, or kind of keeping it within the top 5, rather than in our first and second series, we had so many guest appearances and things. It was such a shame to lose it, but I think we really did it quite effectively in the end.
Because slapstick, it isn't easy at 2 meters.
Absolutely.
The 2 lead characters are kind of, they work in panto as well and stuff. So they're used to things going wrong.
Yes, yeah.
Not busking it exactly, you can't busk it with COVID, but presumably that sort of spirit of kind of creativity in a situation, it was useful.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, honestly, Danny and Mick both, you know, adjusted their comedy as much as possible, and they did as much of it as possible that they could. And, you know, they've got such a fantastic working relationship that it was, you know, all the rehearsals, doing this, they knew how to build in their routine to make sure that they were both safe, and, you know, there wasn't going to be some kind of like crazy accident, or, you know, we were still going to be able to get that punch at the end of the day, where, you know, we might have a gag of them jumping into each other's arms, that might be dialed back slightly where somebody gets something spilled on them, or, you know, we cheat it where somebody jumps into their arms and falls, you know, we shoot it, cut it, get them on the floor, start again. And it was really, honestly, the 2 of them made such an amazing effort. And, you know, really, I think from the episodes that I've seen, it's proved that, you know, we've still got the comedy and the magic of the series behind us.
That's Victoria Griffin there from Danny and Mick. We'll get into exactly what happened on Emmerdale shortly, but first, Matt, as someone running your own business, you didn't have the benefit of, you know, big organisation like ITV behind you or the BBC. So when COVID first reared its ugly head, did you think, right, this could be difficult for us?
100%. We always knew there was something coming, but I didn't expect that we were going to have a full lockdown and everything else. So we'd always planned for a rainy day because of the being born out of the recession. So we were like, well, good times will only last so long, so let's always prepare for the worst. So we'd done an exercise, maybe it's November, of what happens if the tap gets turned off, just out of interest of, well, what if something catastrophic happens? And we knew that we'd have about a 6-month runway. And then to actually have to rely on that when it started edging towards us was was quite scary because all of the decisions were falling on me. Everyone was looking to me for what my take on everything was. So as we started, it started turning from the murmurs and the whispers into actually this is like hurtling towards us and something's going to happen. We saw that a lot of the companies around us that are all like agencies, laptops and all that sort of stuff that they can just pick up and go. They were starting to get cases, and a lot of them had just gone directly home 2-3 weeks before everyone else had. Whereas my line to my team was, it's business as usual until it isn't business as usual, because I was like, we're not going to make a decision based on information that we didn't have. So when it started getting really serious, we looked at it and went, right, we had some jobs that were linked to events, and as soon as we got the first call of, yeah, the event isn't happening at all, we were like, right, this is the first one. They're all going to start falling, and we will have to go, really. So what we ended up doing was splitting production equipment between each of our staff members, so that everyone had a set of cameras, lenses, audio. We ripped out the edit suites. I ended up with the server in my house and things like that. And it was just a case of whatever was going to be left in Boho, where we were based at the time, we had to assume that if places were going to be left pretty much abandoned, there would be treated accordingly, and that if it was left there, it didn't matter, because we assumed that it would get burgled for the worst case scenario. But yeah, it was a very difficult time, like we've all seen, of having to do a work remotely that we've never had to do remotely. No one's ever built studios to do that, or infrastructure to do that. We were just very fortunate that we had post-production because of the way that our slates move along. We've normally got 30 to 40 projects in production, and that half of those were in post. So we were able to go home, and for nothing else, even though the clients weren't speaking to us because they had all gone into lockdown, we had something to do, and we were like, well, we can at least keep doing something, even if it's only for a few hours a day.
Very scary when it's your business on the line. That's
yeah. It was is this the thing that's going to take us down? And then fortunately, we've got a great head of finance and ops, so she sat down and worked out what's the runway at the minute. As soon as furlough came along, because we were able to take advantage of it, I know that a lot of people on this call probably weren't able to because of the freelance thing, but because we had staff, we were able to say, right, as soon as furlough was announced, right, the accountants were all over it, and we knew that we'd be able to do something with it. And then as soon as we knew what was in play, we knew that from March, if we didn't win a single job, we were able to last till September. And it was just that huge sigh of relief that, okay, we can ride something out.
Thanks, Matt. So next, I'm going to take a sort of a quick tour of the Emmerdale set in the hands of Lisa Riley, who everyone will know as Mandy Dingle. So this little film here actually tells you, or it shows you, an awful lot about how they managed to get it to work, and then we'll come back and speak to you about how that worked in practice.
Hello everybody, and welcome to the new rules here at ITV at Emmerdale. Now it's 7 o'clock in the morning, and this is how our day starts.
36.2, perfect.
So I'm allowed to go to the next bit. And as you'll see at every door point, what we're going to do is we're going to sanitise, and we're always going to use the jelly. And here's how we start the colour scheme. Well, it's really simple. We're going to keep the 2 metre distance here, but here we start with the colours. Now, green is to go upstairs for all the script department and all the producers. Red zone is for the actors and the crew. And of course, the blue zone is for the actors and the crew. Today, I'm going to be working and filming with the blue crew. So let's see how it all works. So as part of the new regime, we have minimal crew actually on the floor. And here in our Blue Zone hub today, we've got our second AD, we've got wardrobe and makeup. Now, they are working off this monitor. They can check, for example, if our cardigan is out of place or if our mascara's run. They're working via a walkie-talkie that links through to the floor, and they can pass all the information on. See you soon, team! So normally, we'd be coming to work and I come to my dressing room 9, where I've got 6 of my gorgeous fellow cast members. Not today. No, I'm all on my own. I'm in number 5. Now, our usual allowed 1 hour before filming every day has completely changed. We are now in charge of ourselves. We do our own hair and makeup, and of course, our wardrobe is laid out for us in our room, fully sanitised, in the order of how we're going to shoot it that day. It's amazing. However, because of the one-way system and the circle, if whilst we're shooting, Mandy's eyelash starts to lift, and I need some Mandy Dingle eyelash glue, there's only one person that's going to get it. That's me. Full circle around the building. So of course, we've got new rules for the ladies and gents lavatories. Use the paper towel on all the handles, and of course it was occupied by me, 1 in, 1 out, and then we switch for someone else to use. We take our paper towel, drop it in the dumpster here, and of course never ever forget to re-sanitize. So as I told you, we're all working under the colour scheme. Today I'm with blue. I've followed the path all the way in, but each coloured zone has their own studio. Today I'm on blue, which is Studio 1 and Studio 6. Do you know who lives in Studio 6? The Dingles. Welcome to Studio 6. Over there is our Marlon's house. Here's the lovely David's shop. And where I really want to take you is to my house. We're going to the Dingles. Now this set is so famous, and while we're all in lockdown, a lot of work was being done for our safety, the cast and of course all the crew. Everything has been marked on the floor. The blue area is for the director to direct, to do what he does with us, to the cast. And the cast line is here, the yellow and black zone. So basically the director will stand in here, give all the direction, he then goes back to his monitor and we can perform the scene here. At the end of every day, it gets closed, sanitised, made fully safe for us for the next day's filming. But how do you see us? Well, through the lens, of course, and the cameraman. We've got to keep the cameraman safe. This is one of our HD cameras that's used every day here on Emmerdale. And of course, for the safety aspects, the boys and girls are covered by the Perspex glass here. It's so clever, and mainly, it's here to keep them safe. Well, how as actors do we know that we're a safe distance? I'll tell you why. Well, I won't. Val will tell you. Val, how do we do it? How do you keep the actors 2 metres apart?
Well, we have this pole, and it is very important. You know, we can all think, wow, but it is serious that we need to know exactly how far we are from each other. And it's the same with the crew as well. So I always have this pole with me on the studio floor so I can constantly remind people and check, are you really keeping 2 metres apart? It's absolutely a crucial piece of equipment actually for us all.
And it really does work, but the trickery of the camera is, on camera, we look closer than we actually are. See, the magic of television. This is the blue gallery, where normally you would have 4 members of our production team, but under the new regime, there's only 2, and they're separated by a Perspex screen.
Who knew we get Mandy to show us around like that? Or Lisa, she really is. Now, Ian, I don't know what's, that thing with the stick is funny because in life, you just really don't know what 2 meters is, but if you've got somebody wielding a stick and potentially going to beat you with it, you pay attention, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, one of the main protocols for us was to have cohort managers. The production was divided into four coloured cohorts. 2 for the village, the Emmerdale village, up the top of the village and down in the village, and 2 for studio. And those cohorts never crossed one another. That for the simple reason that if there was some sort of outbreak of COVID in one of the cohorts, the other 3 would remain unaffected and would be able to carry on working. And the cohort manager was attached to each cohort, and their rule was law, really. They'd got the kind of authority to stop rehearsals, to kind of step in if 2 members of crew got too close together or 2 actors got too close together. The cohort manager stepped in and said, let's stop, we need to kind of work this out, and we need to be 2 meters from one another. The tricky end of that, sorry, my dog's scratching at the door to get in, just bear with me.
We're having one of those classic moments of this will now be on a viral YouTube before too long. The cohort manager would work on all that kind of thing with us, and I suppose it showed the extent to which, and you can see the effort that had gone into dividing up the studio and all the sanitation that took place in it.
and what we called the crime lines, which were the yellow and black lines at the edge of the set, so that only the artists were allowed to step onto set. There was a sequential working arrangement brought in so that once the actors had done their thing, the tricky thing for directors was we couldn't go on set with them, so we had to kind of talk them through their moves rather than showing them sometimes. Once the scene had been blocked and shown to the crew, the lighting director and gaffer could step onto set. They weren't allowed to touch any of the furniture or anything, but they could adjust lamps and so forth. And then they would come off. The design department, one member of design would be allowed to step on and maybe make some changes to, a sofa or something like that, or a lamp or whatever. And then occasionally we would have other tweaks by other members of the crew. And the trick from a director's point of view is to try and hide that 2 meter distance. And that eventually led to a kind of, a lot of kind of deep 2 shots and work that meant that you'd kind of choreograph the cast to work towards camera rather than sometimes the other way around.
And obviously you get, you can use green screen and various other things to kind of cheat it as well. But just going back to the idea of normally it's quite a chaotic scene sometimes on set when people are trying to do all their stuff. That all had to stop.
Yeah, as I said, Nana Babadi, the production manager, when we were setting all of this up and deciding where the crime lines were going to be and deciding how the sequential working would work, he said to me, the one thing I don't want to hear, at any point, and I was involved in kind of briefing the other directors about this, was, he said, and we never want to hear the words kick, bollock and scramble on set anymore. Anybody that's ever worked in, drama production knows that, the old saying is, it's, when you work in drama, that it's Ben-Hur in the morning and Benny Hill in the afternoon, in that, everything takes its time in the morning and everybody's working, to get the best stuff that they can. But by the afternoon, if you're trying to make the day work, everybody's running around and crossing one another and bashing into one another, trying to get things done. And that's the old kick, bollock and scramble scenario. Well, that can't happen under COVID, protocols. That's the way that people are going to touch one another, potentially infect one another, and that had to stop. So that was one of the most, ITV took it very, very seriously, and it was drilled into us that it's better to lose a scene and to lose 2 setups at the end of the day than have people rush to try and make the end of day.
As you say, that the old saying is, it's only TV, nobody dies, but that doesn't, that no longer rings true either. We've got questions coming in, so I'll get them when I can. So just a reminder, if you want to ask a question, please use the Q&A button on your Zoom screen at home. So somebody's asked, are COVID-related roles something we should be encouraging graduates and students to consider, or will they be gone in a year or two? Because now you have to know what you're doing now to be on set.
If it's I don't know. I mean, who knows what the hell's going to happen? We're all hoping it's going to stop and we can get back to working how we used to an extent. I think things will change, in many ways anyway. But whether there will be an ongoing COVID protocol officer for a given production is really hard to tell. I don't know.
Obviously, the other thing that's happened is you, as well as being a COVID advisor now, but you're, a director is your main job, or that's what you've been doing. I understand it's changed the relationship between you and script writers.
Well, for the last year or so, we were the first program to actually make drama again, under COVID circumstances. So several productions got in touch with us to ask how we'd done it and how we'd kind of organised ourselves and everything like that. One of my roles beyond that was to liaise between production and the script department to explain to the writers and to the script editors things that were straightforward for us to shoot at 2 meters distance, and things that were very tricky. So a writer might just put down, for example, Brenda hands Pollard a cup of coffee in the cafe. Well, under non-COVID circumstances, that's fine. And that would be a kind of standard opening to a scene as they start a conversation. But in order for her to do that, she would have to go within 2 meters of him. So it was my job to say, can we just lose that light, that stage direction, have the coffee already there and they're in mid-conversation. That's it, it's its most basic level. But my job was partly to liaise with between production and scripts to try and iron out some of the, not the ambition of the writers, but to explain what was tricky and what was more straightforward for us as a production crew. So by the time the scripts got to the directors, the scenes would be more straightforward to film. There were still tricky moments, obviously, and tricky situations to film, but part of my job was to try and iron those things out.
And somebody's asked a question about how people dealt with extras and things like that. So I'm going to quickly go to a clip that I've got with Fahima from Vera, who's explaining what happens, particularly when they've been trying to deal with those kind of issues. So let's see if we can hear what she has to say.
Obviously, our production is very much location based, so we would look at, you know, do we do more exterior, which helps because, you know, you follow the science in that, you know, it's less risk when everyone is out exterior. But if you're in a house, in a small house, that's going to cause problems. So in that, we followed the measures that were set by the industry and then our own protocols, basically. So it was from script stage onwards, basically, that those measures were followed.
So did the script have to change to kind of, you know, so move from something that was interior to exterior just to kind of help along?
I don't necessarily think it moved, but I think that was put in mind, basically, of how can we do this, you know, can we put in more exterior and still get the same level of quality standard story, basically, that we always have. And it helps actually that Vera actually is pretty much, you know, the locations are another feature of the show, you know, a highlight of the show. So, you know, it helps in that front, in that we do film outside quite a lot.
But then you've also got to get the cast, the crew, to some pretty remote locations. Yeah. So there must have been an implication on how you get everybody to one place, and no catering anymore. So what do you do in the middle of nowhere?
I mean, we do have catering, but people can't sit in a room or on a bus and eat, basically. So what they do is our caterers are very good, actually. We've got very good caterers who've adapted, and everyone gets little takeaway boxes.
Obviously, if people are going to have their lunch in their own cars and things, it's a bit of a I don't know, it's a bit of a dreary existence, isn't it, compared to the normal social nature of being on set with people.
Yeah, I think it's. I think I've said to you in the past that we're a pretty resilient force, basically, aren't we, in this industry? And we adapt to pretty much quite a few things, you know, even in the normal times, you know, when challenges are put towards us. So, you know, everyone was, I think, glad that they were back working.
I know in some cases the actors obviously have to self-isolate in hotels because they're not maybe local and they can't go home at night.
Yeah.
I saw a tweet actually from Riley Jones, I think he was saying he was basically at the end of his isolation and he was desperate for a drink on the quayside. The bars had opened. Anybody wanted to join him? I mean, it felt like a lonely plea from a poor actor who'd been in prison.
Yeah, I'm afraid that's kind of one of the downsides, that, you know, they're brought up a few days earlier, and then, you know, they are required to kind of self-isolate. But, you know, that doesn't mean that they can't go out and stuff. It's not that form of imprisonment.
And I'll stop that there. Just I know that they also had problems with, after lockdown had finished, they were then moving on to getting members of the public who were sort of creating crowds, you know, to see what was going on. So they also had a responsibility for people who are not social distancing because they were busy star spotting, you know, that kind of thing. And I'll also go quickly to Victoria, who was talking about what happened with Danny and Mick. It's particularly answered the question that was asked about extras, because their kids drama normally has lots of people around because they have a leisure centre which is open when they're filming. So let's just hear what they did, particularly with looking at how they dealt with what they were left with.
The centre that we shoot at is, you know, a completely working leisure centre. So during the first and second series, we basically filmed around people who were doing various bits of sports and doing classes while we were actually still filming. So when obviously COVID came around, there was a discussion about us basically taking over the leisure centre for an allotted amount of time, which meant that we had basically a full run. So we could use the spaces, you know, the squash courts, the basketball courts, and we could use those and put teams into their own private office spaces, and we could really spread out instead of, you know, and kind of make sure that everybody was in the building. And like I say, everybody was able to have as much access as physically possible. So yeah, it's such a shame because the general public, obviously, you know, people walking through, it kind of has that liveliness to it of, you know, you're shooting around people. But at the same time, obviously, it was the safest option for us and for them. And it meant that, you know, you're not kind of having kids screaming in the background or anything like that. And it was a lot easier for us to, you know, move between spaces, which was quite good. And it's obviously quite helpful. It makes it a lot faster. And, you know, for scheduling as well, not worrying about certain classes impacting on certain things that we wanted to get done.
And one very happy continuity person, presumably.
Absolutely.
Well, so on the other hand, you don't want the screen to be empty. You don't want it to look like an empty leisure centre. So how did you get around that?
So I think part of the agreement that we had made was to use as many members of crew as physically possible as background actors. So that was an opportunity for us to show off, you know, the people who were behind the camera, never really ever seen. So we had, you know, our electrical team, grips department, the line producer Chris was in one of the aerobics classes on scene. So various people were drafted in, and it was a real team effort. Everybody, you know, gave it their all, and, you know, went to costume and got changed, and it was a great laugh. It was, you know, in such a serious time, and with so many things going on around us, it was so brilliant to, you know, be able to draft people in and get to have fun with the people that were around you, and, you know, get to kind of lift the mood a little bit and forget kind of what was going on the outside world, and just, you know, keep an eye on the grips doing basketball scenes. It was a lot of fun.
Well, normally it's hard to drag them in front of camera, but obviously not under COVID.
No, not with COVID. Honestly, anything can happen. It appears, you know, anything's possible in crazy circumstances.
So yeah, they certainly can. And let me show you this. This is, you need to spot this. I'm not sure, I can't tell you which program it's from, but they've also stopped having extras, and they've dressed up mannequins, which will now appear sitting at bars around the place. I noticed the man on the left actually has, well, a woman's chest, but let's not go into the detail. So I want you to try and see if you can spot these in dramas and programs coming up in the not too distant future. There you go. Right, bizarre. So if we move on slightly now and talk about whether, I suppose, well, in the case of Matt, I mean, you had an issue where your offices were in a sort of a shared office space. So presumably you had to worry about not so much the public, but people working in your business milling around where you work, and you weren't in control of their COVID. So was that an issue?
It was a massive issue for us because we managed to get the calls quite quickly as things started to open up, where people just needed, even to show that they were COVID compliant, so that there was a lot of stuff going to government and trying to reopen, say, the building sites and things like that. So people were calling us and were like expecting us to be ready to film, which we were. And I think it was quite I don't know how to put it really. It was really good that that's how they viewed us, that we would have adapted to what was going on, whereas other companies had completely shut. But in terms of when we managed to get into the office a little bit, you've got us with our say COVID practices, masks and sanitizing and things like that, and the distancing. And because we were going into corporate places that had huge no-nos about one-way systems, things like that, so we were used to working with it really quickly. But then as things relaxed a little bit and more companies came back, you just stood there going, why are you near my team? And we're almost in the same space and things like that. And we were very lucky that we didn't have any cases, but anyone who needed to self-isolate was a direct result of other people in the building having coming proximity. And it was like, well, we can't take the chance because people are relying on us to be at their place tomorrow. So if if you've got to go and get a test, I want you to go and get a test now when I want you to go. And it felt quite brutal in some ways. It was very much like sort of, yeah, you need to go. I'll take the cameras, and I ended up shooting more than I have in the past couple of years, which I enjoyed in the beginning. But yeah, it was always the last minute stuff. But not being able to be in control of that was a massive, massive issue for us, which led us to really get out of there.
So Ian, let's move on to kind of whether, obviously in the early days, people were just doing the best they could, but obviously with a soap, you got the ambition to kind of do as best you can. So did you get better, if you like, at trying to be more ambitious?
Well, we started quite small. I mean, as I said, the first episodes were two-handers, two actors in one set, and we kind of built it up from there. And a decision was taken that, in amongst all the protocols, which were very exacting, and working with two cameras and a smaller sound crew, in order to facilitate the 2 meters and everything. But a decision was taken that we would limit the number of cast on set to begin with, and stories were told in slightly more simple ways than we perhaps might have wanted to tell them. As things kind of relaxed last summer, we started to be able to add more characters and kind of open things up out a little bit, but then it closed down again, and we had to kind of pull in our sails again and limit the number of cast and those sort of things. And then we got into this year, and a decision was taken that the viewers really kind of deserved to see something a little bit more kind of ambitious, well, a lot more ambitious from us. And a director called Dave Beecham was asked to do a big stunt, a big stunt under normal conditions, and a lot of work and effort had gone into it, in terms of preparing the stunt area to be able to be clean and sterile, and have two cameras working within it that have the space to have them work, and all that kind of thing. And it was quite an amazing thing to pull off.
Should we have a look at it? Because I think it's worth having a look at. And as I say, you have to ask yourself, can you spot the difference between COVID and non-COVID? Could we have done, would it have been any better otherwise, I suppose? Let's have a look.
I mean, what kind of sicko beats up his own son?
I don't.
Then lies about it and hires people like Connor to cover it up. Makes disgusting excuses.
You need to back off.
Why? Truth hurts. You're such a failure, Paul.
I'm warning you.
Gambler, liar, thief, bully. I mean, I could go on all day. Because you're a loser and you're a letdown to your whole family.
Stop it.
Randy will soon see that you're a sad, weak, pathetic little man.
Shut up! You should have kept it shut!
Astounding. Absolutely astounding, really. So, with your director's hat on, I mean, that's difficult to do at the best of times.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the thing about it is, at the very beginning when we started, it was minimal crew. We nobody on set or on location that didn't absolutely have to be there. But by the time you get around to filming something like that, obviously you're bringing in contractors from outside. Jib operators, or drone operators, or the stunt operatives, the people who blow things up and pull things apart. Those sort of people were brought in, and some testing was involved for those people coming to set, and there were the stunt people were put into bubbles for that, and I'm sure that's happened a lot on more high-end dramas. because that's the only way you can kind of get people to work at close proximity together. An impressive piece of work under any circumstances, but to be able to do it when you know that behind the scenes all that crew is at 2 meters from one another and not working under the most optimum conditions, it's an even bigger achievement, I think.
So Matt, if I could turn to you. So, people learned stuff during COVID. They kind of, I think even people's private lives, you took a look back and thought, what's important in life? All that kind of the important heavy stuff, I suppose. So from your point of view, your business would have to change a little bit. So to give people an idea, I've put together sort of your normal work and then some work that sort of came out of the changes that went along. So let's have a quick look at this and then talk about it straight after that. Let's have a look.
Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in, and thank you so much for the warm welcome from the Access team we have here in our audience. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Andrew Warbrick, Managing Director of Access BDD, to kick off the show.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you, everyone. First of all, I would like to welcome everyone who's joining us in the room, and also to all of our partners who are joining us online from around the world.
So a big change then. So businesses suddenly found they needed not so much the corporate videos, but they needed to talk to their audiences across the world all of a sudden. So a very different change for you.
Yeah, there was I saw myself skulking around in the background on that one there. Forgotten I made a cameo. But yeah, it was kind of like, so a lot of the showreel stuff there was shot in isolation and things like that, and it's very reflective of like there's the family stuff there, but they were a family. So like they were saying about the comment about the extras, there was opportunities there where it's like, oh well, we need the child actor, so we'll get the mum and dad as well, which may not have normally happened. But in terms of the events and things like that, so that was for a huge product launch, which they do a product every 10 years. So they've been gearing towards this for the past 8, and they were just like, well, how do we launch it in like when we can't get everyone there? So they would normally spend probably, I don't know, maybe £500,000 on the launch, and we ended up that we shot it in Winstone View, in Teesside. And we used their local office so that we had delegates there. So it felt like more an event because they were bubbled anyway. We were all masked up for the entire thing because we were like, well, we need to get through this day. And after we've got the footage, we're okay. And we did like the YouTube premieres and things like that, where they were able to have that personal touch with their customers that they would normally get by inviting them down and sort of pampering them a bit and things like that. But it was like, okay, well, let's all have a bit of time together at 10 o'clock on a Thursday morning, and we'll launch the new product that you're all waiting for and things like that. So there was quite a few like that, where it was like, well, how do we take minimal amount of people, including us as a micro crew, to reach a wider, albeit niche, audience that's very specific. And I think the people who've done it have learned a lot about where they stand with their customers around it and the importance of that relationship. So it's been fascinating, and people have been very receptive to. They've just wanted the problem solving, really.
So the question is, I suppose, we've learned lots during all of this. So is this now the new normal? Will you be doing more of that kind of work?
I hope not. It's good, and there's a place for it. I think there's elements of it that can stay, but I think that everyone's wanting. I think we will naturally go to something that approached normal. There's more of the aspects around the production rather than the production itself that I think I'd definitely like to keep hold of. But there's definitely a thing of, and this has been great for us, of people who don't need to be there not being there. It has been great, because you sort of go, well, if you've got nothing to add, you don't need to go there. So go and do something else, that type of thing. And that's been a bit of a blessing for us.
Yeah, tough message to deliver sometimes, I'm sure. But
yeah.
So Ian, what's, you know, there are positives. We found silver linings in all of this. So you mentioned, you know, that directors and writers are perhaps talking more than they did in the past. So what are the things we're going to retain when we go back to normal?
For most of the 20 odd years I've been doing this, the writer has not been in the same room as the director. So there's never been that connection. When I've worked on other things, on dramas and independent stuff and other projects, I've worked closely with writers, and I think a writer-director get together is often a really good thing. It takes out all the sort of Chinese whispers out of things. And one of the positives of the Zoom meeting culture is that the writer, no matter where they are, can join the director in a script meeting. And that's been a new thing that's been introduced. And I think the writers have loved it and the directors have loved it. And we've been able to kind of talk through the problems and issues with the script there and then in the same room, if you like, virtually. So that's a real positive. I think the other positives are that there's more of a heightened sense of family and camaraderie amongst the crews, really. The crews on shows like Corrie and Emmerdale tend to be mostly staff, and they tend to be there the year round. And often I think we've taken, I mean, there's a lot of things that have been taken for granted prior to this. You know, life has been taken for granted. Going for a pint with your mates has been taken for granted. You know, everybody's taken things for granted. And I think one of the best things about this is that because of the stop-start sequential nature of the work, as in everybody has the time to do their own aspect of it in a sequence because that's safe, it's meant that we've all had time to kind of look at what other people do and what they bring to it, rather than in a homogenized lump where everybody just kind of runs around doing their bit. And I think there's been a positive to that, really. I just think it's made us all aware of what we all do, and that's no bad thing.
I know that when I worked for the BBC, and I'm talking a long time ago, when health and safety came around, we used to, you know, dub them the Programme Prevention Department. Yeah. I mean, I think people take it seriously now, don't they? And it's got to be a good thing, because we've worked a way around it and we found a way of doing it safely. Yeah,
obviously, you know, we've all felt a little bit like we've had both hands tied behind our back, directors, in terms of things like we haven't been able to use track and dolly, because track and dolly meant that unless you got bubbled grips crew, that your cameraman and the grips would be too close together to work. So we've ended up using sliders and not being able to work at height. So finding areas within the village where there's some actual steps and things to put a camera at the top of steps and things like that, and kind of improvising and finding ways around it. But I think everybody's looking forward to being able to work in a more normal way, as in being able to use the right equipment for the right job, and to get the actors together in a, you know, to make the shots work properly and all that. I think everybody's looking forward to that. But I hope that what comes out of it going forward is that, you know, we do, you know, look at what we've had to work with, realise we've been able to make some very good programmes, notwithstanding all that, and, you know, recognise what we all do.
I'm going to quickly go to Victoria, who can tell us a bit about how she's looked back on what's happened with her production, the kids' TV production.
I think from a production perspective, it really put into frame, you know, the meeting side of it, the paperwork side of it, you know, how we distribute things, how we go about our daily business. And, you know, we massively cut down on script, we massively cut down on sides, we went digital. And it was kind of from, you know, an economic side, it really increased our sustainability. And it was such a strange byproduct of saying, you know, our sustainability has gone up because we haven't had to print the scripts and we haven't had to print the sides. And I think overall, it showed how adaptable we can be when we need to be. And, you know, you and I both know the industry is ever changing, and you are faced with so many things that you have to adapt on a daily basis. And something like COVID really, you know, put into perspective how we needed to go about the day-to-day, not just, you know, the overall kind of project. So yeah, I think from our side of it, it just showed how innovative you can be. And like I say, having people on set and the zoning and the testing, how to restructure the day and, you know, make sure that people are safe in ways that maybe we didn't think about before.
And I suppose ultimately, the one thing that might have suffered was the opportunities for, you know, people coming in as runners, the kind of the newbies to the industry.
Yeah.
We're told, actually, this is too difficult right now. So has there been a year of lack of opportunity, do you think, and will that change?
I think in the beginning, there might have been more of a lack of opportunity, obviously, because when we started, it was all about kind of bringing in the key members of staff, which is such an unfortunate thing, because obviously training opportunities are such a massively important part of the entire industry. And I mean, I was a trainee, I was a runner, and without it, I wouldn't have been able to, you know, build my career and you know, get through the past 5 years. But I think now we've got more of a handle on exactly what we need to do and exactly how, you know, it's been a year of adjustment for people. So it's working out, you know, if you want to be a runner, then you need to have your screen skills, COVID training, and, you know, learning how the set works. So like I said, the zoning, if you need to be on set, then you wear your lanyards and you wear your passes and you don't over interact with people. And, you know, it's like understanding a new rule book essentially. But I definitely think from my last 2 jobs and the job that I'm on currently, you know, we do have trainees, we do have runners. And I think it was unfortunately having that, you know, 3, 6, 9 months of adjustment for people to restructure, you know, how to bring on junior members of crew. But now we know, and now we, you know, understand how to do it safely for them, and obviously, you know, safely for us. We can make sure that, you know, nobody's going to be left out, and everybody still has the opportunity to join the industry and, you know, have such a fantastic experience and get to be part of, you know, wonderful shows and fantastic crews.
So the good news is, I gather, Matt, your new premises now, and you're expanding in effect, or recruiting. I saw an advert for you guys today. So
yeah, it's we took a long, hard look at ourselves during the first lockdown, and we were like, well, we were getting really bloated with the types of job roles we had and things like that. So we ended up restructuring the company, which we all know what that means. And unfortunately, it meant that we had to let a couple of people go. And it echoes what was said there about the key people. And that was a very harsh realization when you go, well, actually, these are the key people, because these are the ones that we don't want to lose. But very quickly, we were able to put the plan into place where we were able to take on different types of roles. And that's really kick-started us, and it got us enough sort of momentum so that when we've hit lockdowns 2 and 3, they've been the worst, but we've been able to at least know that how our clients respond to it and things. We were looking at moving premises anyway. This is something that had been going on pre-COVID, but we've been able to make that happen in the past 2 months. So we've moved into our own building, so we don't need to worry about what other companies are doing now, and maybe their standards don't quite mix with ours, because again, a lot of people are just office based, whereas we were in and then out and then in and then out. And then yeah, we're now recruiting a cinematographer, so it's we've got a lot of demands on our back, and I'm never ever going to complain about having too much to do. I never did anyway, because like I said, we were born with a recession, so I've been in a company with no work, and it wasn't very nice. I didn't like it at all, and yeah, we'd all rather be too busy than not. But it's changed the way that we view the types of work that we want to do and the people that we want to work with.
Well, we need to wrap up, but Ian, that's kind of the thing is that at the moment you can't get crew for love nor money because it seems productions are starting up all over the place now. So there is some good news now, at least.
Yeah, quite. I mean, I was having a conversation with a fight stunt director yesterday, and I was talking to some drone operators today about something that we're setting up, and they were both saying they were really busy, and you know, there's a lot of work going on now. It suddenly seems to have kind of burst into life, you know, particularly at the high end, I think. But we're on shows like Emmerdale, you know, it's mostly staff, so people will keep going. It's bringing in the outside operators and contractors that are going to be trickier for shows, I think. But if you've looked after your staff, which is what Emmerdale and Coronation Street and ITV's serial drama has done, you know, I think everybody's felt safe and secure and, you know, wanted. And I think that's paid dividends really in the end.
Well, thanks very much indeed, Ian, to Matt, and in absentia to Victoria and also to Fahima. I can tell you that Vera managed to get 2 episodes filmed before Christmas, and they're going out this year. And the ones they're filming at the moment, in fact, one being filmed right now, is going out next year. So we are definitely going to see Vera on our screens, and of course, Emmerdale never really left our screens, I'm pleased to say. So they say you should end with a bang, so maybe that's the way I'm going to do it tonight. Sorry I couldn't get to all of your questions, but this is going from beyond the crash scene on Emmerdale. This really is a big bang with which to leave you. So we'll see what happened.
Jimmy?